Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with me, Christian Harris. Today I'm joined by Stuart Farquharson, who's the founder and director of RiskTalk. Stuart has built his career across high-risk industries like mining, transport, and infrastructure, and he's now leading innovation in how we approach safety conversations. In this episode, we dive into why moving from paperwork to dialogue transforms outcomes, how voice technology can unlock engagement from frontline workers, and why user experience in safety tools is so often overlooked, but so crucial. Stuart also shares insights on the role of data, AI, and innovation in shaping the future of safety, and how RiskTalk is helping some of the world's biggest organizations make safety conversations more natural, effective, and meaningful. If you are interested in shifting from tick box compliance to genuine safety culture and in seeing where the next wave of safety technology is heading, then this is an episode you won't want to miss. Cheers.
Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with Christian Harris. We believe that proactive safety and risk management powers business performance. Each week we explore this theme, sharing guests, stories, insights, trends, hints and tips. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms, and video versions are available on YouTube. But for now, let's join the conversation with Christian.
Stuart, thanks for joining me today.
How are we doing?
Yeah, I'm good. And it's morning for me, evening for you. So we'll try not to keep you too long. Don't need to be suffering from no sleep.
No, that's absolutely no worries. I'm a little bit jet lagged actually, coming from the US, so I'm starting to wake up now actually, as compared to the rest of the day. So, but it's all good to go.
Perfect. Well, we can try and do the longest ever podcast then, if you like, and see if we can break a world record.
I don't know if I'll make it that far, but I'm excited about it though.
Good man. So let's start with a bit of your story and background. So you worked in some high risk sectors before. What sort of led you to get transitioning from that into what you're currently doing now with RiskTalk?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've worked in a whole bunch of different industries, mining and roads and rail, construction, utilities, and essentially the workers on the ground come up to us and said, well, this paperwork absolutely sucks. And this might be like a JHA or a task hazard analysis or a pre-start brief or whatever we want to call it out there, a dynamic risk assessment. And like they do in Australia, they're very upfront about their thoughts. And they said, yeah, this is terrible. Why are we writing all these things out? It doesn't reflect the work we're doing. We really just we want to have a conversation about how we're going to do it. And we were thinking, yeah, you should be having a conversation. That's a pretty important part of what we do.
Yeah.
Even just communicating amongst each other is an important part of what we do. So why don't we build you something where you can go and talk about it, and we can remove that paperwork side of you for you guys, so we can get rid of one of the greatest fears for starters, especially blue collar workers being caught not being able to read and write at the level that we expect them to, or even just the inefficiencies that it's just a pain having to write out the same form over and over again. So I guess that's how we started, and thousands of different iterations later, here we are, and we've got some of the world's biggest organizations using it now, which is pretty exciting.
Fantastic. So was there a particular sort of tipping point or incident or insight you got, or was it just that there was that kind of constant accumulation over time, and it started frustrating and annoying you, and then you started thinking, right, how could we do this better? Or was there like a light bulb moment where it suddenly kind of clicked?
Well, I went from mining into the roads industry, and that was when I kind of gone, right, well, this is coming across two different industries. Let's go have a look at some of the other industries as well. And any kind of heavy industry we found was having exactly the same problem, where everyone required paperwork. No one wanted to fill out paperwork. And it was just when someone came up and said, look, we want to do this. We want to talk about it. But then I guess on top of it, all this kind of new view safety or safety two or safety differently or human performance and hop and all
Mm.
those kind of philosophies were coming into play like a little bit more. And we're like, well, yeah, this all these new philosophies and thoughts that people are having, this absolutely aligns with exactly what we're doing already.
Yeah.
Um, why don't we? And I'm not saying that we align perfectly with all that, but I think everyone, whether you're a new view safety person or an old school safety person, I think we can all agree that having the right conversation at the right time matters. Um, and so having all the documentation and things like that really had an impact just from the conversation. Um, so essentially, it was just when people came up to us and said, "Let's talk about it." And so we aligned it with what the worker on the ground wanted,
Yeah.
and then a lot of the human performance philosophies aligned with what we did anyway. So um, it wasn't as though I went out looking for different things. I well, myself and my business partners, we just go, yeah, we just want to build something for the people on the ground rather than management.
Yeah.
Um, and it turns out that a lot of the rest of the world was thinking that they just didn't have the tool to actually be able to do it. So, um, yeah, it's exciting times at the moment. As I say, I've just been in the US at a Fisher Improvement Technologies conference, which they're uh, Rob and Ray Fisher. They're amazing in the whole human performance space. Um, so yeah, they asked us to come and talk about what we do from a human performance side through technology.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, it definitely sounds like it's going from strength to strength, and I like the fact that you built something based on sort of a feedback and a need, and actually what people were looking for. I think too often people kind of create these technologies because they sound cool and they think, oh, this must be useful, but actually they haven't necessarily overlapped the tech and what's really required, and then they don't sort of get anywhere with it.
Yeah, well, the thing is, most people build technology and build software for to create pretty graphs for like upper management,
Yeah.
um, rather than building it for the worker on the ground as a tool to make their life better. Um, and like I mean, these pretty graphs and things, like all management want to see is a graph where things like incidents and injuries are going down. And literally, it's just to try and reduce the anxiety of a business. It's not
Mm.
trying to make safety any better or make people work any differently on the ground. It's
Mm.
just like, well, let's manipulate the data to make sure that the graphs are looking better and better each month. So management are less anxious about being prosecuted or sued or litigated against. And we're so opposite to that. We just don't want to have anything to do. Actually, one of our first biggest clients came to us and said that they needed an extra checklist in there, and we said, no, we're not putting it in there. You're just trying to create another graph for upper managers when now your 50,000 workers need to go through a whole extra step every single time they go through this process. Um, so we always said if it's not more engaging, more efficient, or more intuitive, we're not going to put it in our application software.
Love that. Love that. That's your Australian culture coming out, as you said earlier, about Australians not being afraid to speak their mind. And I think, a lot of people would um, cling to that sort of the customer's always right perspective. And actually, I think it's great to stand your ground there and stand up for what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I also think one of the beauties, like, look, I love my job. Like, I wouldn't want to be doing anything else at all. I get to go like, around the world and I get to see company safety systems, see how they work, see how people work, and see how either software or safe systems of work with people on the ground. Um, So I guess from an experience perspective, I can see what works, see what doesn't work, and then we can see what the people on the ground want as well, and what would make their life better.
Yeah.
So if we can do that, then we can embed that in our technology, and we can go, right, well, this is an issue. Maybe we can help you out here.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, the customer doesn't know what they want. They think they do. But I mean, even here in Western Australia, we might have mine sites of the same company who don't talk to each other. And they want different things, and they don't know what works at one site or the other site. So, um, yeah, a lot of companies don't know what they want. They don't know what's out there. So yeah, it's really good to be able to go and share our knowledge and experience about what we've seen
Yeah.
work for people anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely, definitely. So you mentioned before that we can probably all agree that having a conversation is a worthwhile thing to do. What is it specifically about having dialogue that's more effective at changing safety outcomes than having a tick box form?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess for starters, you're not constricted to a tick box form, or even if you're writing in a box, like if you've got a text string or anything like that, you're not constricted to that. Um, One thing that we don't do as well is we don't show people the voice to text or anything in front of them. It absolutely completely ruins the conversation.
Yeah.
We always say, when you go and watch a movie and if the subtitles are on, you can't help but read them.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny. As soon as we removed that from the user experience, then everyone's heads went up. They started looking around. They started pointing at different things. People call it point and call or point and touch. Um, yeah, that completely changed the whole user experience. But I guess what it does, it opens up people to share experience as well. We hear a lot of little stories in there. People go, "Oh no, you can't do that. The last time Johnny did that, he got his finger crushed," or the last time someone did this, this happened. And we love those little stories. Um, we know that people can embed that information in their brain a lot easier, in their temporal lobe. They
Yeah.
can also recall those things a lot easier as well. So we hear those stories being repeated, and then it becomes a systematic approach to the way people work in an organization. So
Mm.
um, I think that dialogue is so important. Um, but also on top of that, we can also look at the dynamics of a conversation as well. So do you just want one person standing up? And different scenarios call for different dynamics. We understand that, but do you just want one person standing up and saying, "This is how we all work today," or do you want them standing in front of people asking, "Well, what do you think?
Mm.
Where do you see the risks being, or how are you going to do your part of the job?" And then we can all learn, and the leaders can really get a good understanding of the knowledge of their workers as well. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many different dynamics to voice technology,
Mm.
or conversation. Most importantly, I mean, the voice technology is just capturing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's we just, as we said, the right conversation at the right time, and the conversation is the important part.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you have any experience of like maybe when you first kind of started realizing this before, maybe even before you set up the business, where you started sort of changing the approach to be more conversational and having that dialogue and what effect did that have on morale, outcomes, efficiency, etc.?
Yeah, I look. In all honesty, because I've been in a range of different kind of aspects of work, like from operational to safety aspects, and I think I was a pretty bad safety professional. Um, and potentially that's just the way I mean, you only know what you know, right? So
Yeah.
I think I started a fair bit being a bit of a safety cop, and I absolutely hated it. And I really wanted people to, well, like me,
Yeah.
rather than me going and say, no, you must do it this way. You missed these things. Let's look at your risk assessment. Oh, why was that terrible? Always blame the person. Um, and I didn't have a thorough understanding of what that worker was going through. I didn't know what their day was like. I didn't know how much of a rush they were in. So without actually understanding those kind of aspects, how can you be a good safety professional?
Hmm.
Um, and I guess it was only when I started chatting to people on a more one-on-one basis and getting to know them, I really got to understand what kind of, and then actually working in the ops space a fair bit as well. Um, I could get a very good understanding of what people actually go through. So um, I guess that was when my kind of my brain ticked over and go, we can do this so much better.
Yeah.
We can still be compliant and everything, but that could be a byproduct of actually just doing our work in a safe, efficient manner and capturing that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And have you got any examples of, more recently with clients of, I don't know what kind of metrics that you're monitoring, but just, a couple of maybe before it was this and after it was that as a sort of indicator of how this works really well.
Yeah, yeah. We've got some great examples. We've got some big construction companies in the US. Sunt Construction. Hopefully they don't mind me mentioning them, but they were one of our very first clients. And they actually love talking about us, which is great. But they used to just have they called it a THA, a task hazard analysis. They had a whole bunch of Spanish speaking workers who would nod and then sign on to it. So they never really knew that actually communication was actually happening. So now they just speak Spanish into it, and that's their pre-task assessment or your task hazard analysis. And then they're able to analyze that and use an AI coach to look through it and see, well, what did we miss, or what should we be talking about if we're working at heights or working in a
Mm.
confined space. Um, we've also got some really good metrics around. We've got a feedback loop in RiskTalk as well, where like managers or senior management can jump in there, have a listen or a quick read, and leave some feedback for the workers on the ground.
Right.
Um, and we found that's had a huge impact on not so much the number of incidents and injuries, but the seriousness of incidents and injuries.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of data on that, and especially feedback from upper management has an enormous impact just on the quality of conversations. Um, so we always recommend, and we capture that as a lead indicator as well.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess one of the other thing that's had an impact is the amount people amend. We call it an amendment, and I'm not talking about the American Constitution. It's just how often people go back and add stuff to their kind of dynamic assessment because we know
Mhm.
things change so regularly. Um, if people can just jump in there, press a big red button, and go, right, this has changed, so we're now doing this, or we've got Johnny rocking up on site. We've had a chat with him. He's going to be doing this today. He's aware, or have the conversation with him, and we capture that as an indicator as well. And we've seen that have a huge impact on, as I say, this more seriousness of injuries rather than the number,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is great to see.
Yeah. No, fantastic. Fantastic. So you mentioned in your example there language as one of the kind of potential blockers of being able to engage frontline workers. I guess there's also like psychology, there's maybe fatigue, there's maybe um, sort of relationships between senior people and frontline people. I mean, what have you learned over the years in terms of how to bring frontline workers into this proactive risk management space?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought up the relationship between managers and workers. The one thing we've found is that people in the office think that the worker on the ground doesn't want to be recorded um,
Right.
or captured in an application. And if you remove that paperwork from them, they're more than happy to talk. And we also know that they don't, uh, the whole, like a lot of people would say, oh, we've got an aging workforce, they're not going to want to do something like this. That's a complete fallacy as well. Everyone's got a smartphone. We have had people call us up at 2 in the morning asking for their Apple password. We're like, sorry, we can't help with that. You're gonna have to go through Apple for that. But look, if you can download an app, you can use it, and they love using it. One thing we know is that our AI coach is um, it's not subjective. So it's got nothing to do with what a supervisor or manager thinks.
Mhm.
It's what essentially the AI is telling someone, well, maybe you should have a look at these things. Um, if you are working at heights, have you considered anchor points, or do you have a spotter or anything like that? So they can go back and go, oh, we actually did miss this. Let's go jump and have a quick chat about that.
Mhm.
But it's not someone coming in and auditing them saying, where's your piece of paper? You missed this, this, and this.
Yeah.
Um, so we thought it would be a little bit big brothery, but it hasn't turned out that way at all. It's been actually a fantastic feature that we've released, where it's just the large language model going, right, well, you should consider these things if you're doing this kind of work. So that's, yeah, massive impact on the workers on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. And how so I know some people who are quite well, I know people at both ends of the spectrum, right? I know people that are massively leaning into AI, for example, and then I know other people who are, I don't know if afraid of it is the right word, but they're sort of almost trying to like blank it out and sort of and pretend that it's not there and just kind of
Yeah.
crack on as normal. So whenever you're thinking about implementing technology, there's always this kind of risk, as you say, about is it an aging workforce? And there are some conceptions about that which may or may not be true. But certainly around AI, I'm feeling like there are some quite strong feelings on either side of that. How have you found that side of things? You know, there's obviously one thing is recording and transcribing, and that doesn't feel like AI, even though there is some AI in there. But there's another, a large language model coming and coaching you and stuff. How's that gone over? Pardon the quick interruption. We'll get you right back to the interview shortly. You're invited to join me at Risk Europe on the 12th and 13th of November at the Excel Centre in London. I'll be there doing live podcast interviews, hosting some seminars on stage, and talking to people on our stand. Your ticket is totally free, and there's a link in the notes where you can sign up and join us in November for this really exciting risk management related event. Here's the founder and event director, Nick James, with a few words on what you can expect. Looking forward to November, then, Nick. There's a huge wealth of seminar sessions taking place. Are there any particular speakers or sessions that you're really excited about?
Well, there's one I'm particularly looking forward to seeing myself because it's a guy called Jess Taylor, and he spoke at our event in New York back in July, hashtag Risk New York. And Jess, in the early 1990s, built something that we all use today, which is the first app store that he presented and persuaded Steve Jobs to get behind. He spoke to a packed audience in New York, and we're getting him on a plane to bring him over to London. So yeah, really looking forward to that one. Obviously, the other one of note is our old friend Michael Rasmussen, who is a legend in this business. He's known as the father of GRC. Michael will be hosting a number of theatres, presenting himself, and he'll be there for people to come up and talk to. And he's probably one of the most respected analysts in the governance, risk and compliance sector.
Great. So two definitely or three sessions there to put into your diaries when you do join us.
I think the other thing is that there's always people that have got practical experience. So we have chief risk officers, chief privacy officers, heads of risk, heads of governance, risk and compliance from real companies. And they come, and very often they bare their soul. They share their knowledge, they share the mistakes, and that's one thing that we all need to be able to do. Again, especially in these times when people are working remotely, and you can pick up some snippets from people who have been there and done that.
So do join Nick and I on the 12th and 13th of November at Risk Europe at the Excel Centre in London. You can find all the details on where to get your free ticket in the show notes. Now, let's get back to the interview.
It's gone over really well from the perspective of the worker on the ground. The thing I always around AI. Like, people need to get an understanding of what AI is. Like, there's a whole different range of different types of AI, and
Yeah.
whether it's generative or whatever different type of AI we're talking about. Um, but even with AI, you need good data coming in. Because if you've got bad data coming in, then you're going to get bad outcomes from your AI anyway.
Mhm.
Um, so, so that's what's so important about trying to capture that conversation, because it's actually what people are talking about out there. It's not what's on a piece of paper, or you're not running AI over your injury rates, which might be 0.01% of the work that you're actually doing. It's like if you drive past Tesco's on the way to work, then all of a sudden the large language model is going, well, the AI is going to tell you, oh, this person loves Tesco's and shops there. So no, just driving past there on the way to work. It's terrible
Yeah.
data. Um, but if you're capturing that conversation, you're capturing more of what work actually is. Then
Mhm.
you can use AI to actually look at insights and actually get a really good understanding of work as it's being done in the field.
Yeah.
Um, but if you've got terrible data, then yeah, there's no point using AI. I mean, also with data, we talk about it like there's only two things you can really do with it. And one's either you make an informed decision or you sell it. Like there's not a huge amount you can do with data. They're the two things. Um, I know you might want to store it for later knowledge further down the line of, well, maybe we can do stuff like future proofing things, but um, otherwise, you better be making some sort of an informed decision with that data. Otherwise, what's really the point?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, AI bit scary. I think probably the scariest things with AI from a safety space is people using things like ChatGPT and things to create their own safety systems and create
Yeah.
safe operating procedures and stuff like that. Be very, very wary of that.
Yeah.
Um, you can do that within RiskTalk, but at least all that's all your own data. But then you still need to go through the proper consultation processes. And I
Yeah.
wouldn't just ask our AI Insights module, create me a operating procedure for this, and then hand it out to someone. And you've still really got to go through the proper processes.
Yeah. 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 No, absolutely. And I think that's where, in terms of data and insights, I've always found it quite fascinating because we've had so much data for such a long time, but it's kind of like the data itself is not that valuable unless you can manipulate it and analyze it and come up with those insights. And that is, to me, what's exciting about AI, particularly in the sort of large language model space, is actually manipulating this data and having a first look at it and kind of taking so much time and effort out of it. But then, as you exactly rightly said, you can't just believe it. It still makes mistakes. I mean, I have I've got a PDF of my book, right, and I so sometimes put uh, into ChatGPT like the PDF of my book, and I'll say, right, um, looking at the chimes model in this book, can you do X, Y, Z? And even when it's literally
Yeah.
given the PDF and there's chapters about what does chimes mean, it still sometimes gets it totally wrong, and it like makes up what one of those letters stands for, which is totally different. So
Yeah,
yeah, you absolutely need to have
hallucinate.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, that human interaction as well.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more. Look, it's a great, like things like ChatGPT, awesome tools. And there's a whole range of different ones of those. But look, yeah, be wary of it, but I think use it as much as possible. I think they're going to be great tools moving forward. And you might get left behind a little bit if you're not as aware of these things, because technology is moving so rapidly. You've got to keep your ear to the ground, I think, otherwise you might get a little bit left behind.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the key, I guess, benefits that you've spoken about so far today of what you guys do is kind of helping to shift from s- compliance, tick boxes compliance into more um, meaningful behavior and culture first safety. What sort of happens in your experience if this shift doesn't take place? And what are the kind of risks of that? And then conversely, what are some of the benefits of taking that different approach?
Yeah. Look, and don't get me wrong, I 100% understand that what we do with Risk Talk, we're a tool, right?
Hmm.
Where if you can use it and you can weaponize it in any different way you like, we're fortunate enough to find that companies that want to use us are quite forward thinking and they want to
Yeah.
use it in the right way to improve their culture. However, I can see companies at some stage using it more as a weapon to try and blame people,
Hmm.
as any tool can. I mean, it's what we did with your written risk assessment, whether it's a JHA or a pre-task brief or dynamic risk assessment. It's pretty much been weaponized to say, well, these are the things you missed. This is why it happened. So, yep, that can happen. We're very fortunate to work with some really cool companies to not only look at, as I say, at the context of what people are talking about, but also the dynamics. So trying to improve the conversation from the person who's leading that conversation. Um, so like, yeah, as I mentioned before, we want people being open, asking open questions. We want people engaged and actively listening, and we can start telling all those different aspects within Risk Talk as well. So,
Yeah.
and then the AI coach will provide that feedback to the person who's leading the conversation and go, oh, these are different areas you can improve on.
Hmm.
But yeah, as I say, can be weaponized. It's just a tool, right?
Yeah. So be careful. Be careful with it. Um,
Well, look,
and
yeah, we haven't seen it yet properly. Like it hasn't been used as a stick or anything because we are so focused on the worker on the ground. As I say, if it's more engaging, more efficient, or more intuitive for the worker on the ground, then then we see far better outcomes.
yeah,
So we haven't seen it yet, but
yeah,
I'd imagine the day will come at some stage.
yeah, yeah. That whole kind of user experience piece that you just mentioned there, and you've mentioned a couple of times before as well. I see that as being really crucial and a key component of your success. Why would you say that historically has been perhaps a bit overlooked?
Yes. So I think safety has made a huge mistake in overlooking user experience. Um, and enormous. And we still haven't moved that far from having a very bad user experience. Often like now that we've gone into the digital age, we've got a form that everyone's hated, and a lot of companies gone, right, let's digitize this form that everyone hates. And they've just gone from paper to
Yeah,
glass. They go,
yeah,
oh, now I've form that everyone hates and it's on a tablet. Um, and that user experience is just so poor that you're going to get poor data from it as well. And I think one thing that we fail in the safety space is looking at everyday reality of what's actually occurring out there and what works,
hmm,
um, and then bringing that into the reality of safety rather than the other way around.
yeah,
Um, so, like, if you look at all your biggest and best companies around the world, like Spotify, you can get any song you want in a couple of clicks. If it was an extra click, people probably wouldn't use it. And then something else would come in and take its place. Um, Google's outdone all the other kind of search engines because the user experience was better. Apple,
Apple, yeah,
I always joke around that like no one's ever read a manual for an Apple iPhone.
yeah,
And in all honesty, I don't even know if one exists. Um, but it's like the user experience is there. Um, but then when it comes to work about how to do a job that we already know how to do most of the time, we're asked to fill out a big piece of paper or write out a procedure or anything like that. And the user experience it just doesn't translate to work properly.
mm,
Um, so yeah, I think we should be looking at like what are the best companies around the world doing for um, to create a better user experience and why people want to use it. And if you create a good user experience, you get good data, you get good outcomes. Um, it's not as though like someone. at Google is sitting there, or Amazon or whatever is sitting there and typing in this person searched this, and then allocates it to your name. Where that's what we do in safety. We should all that should be all automated and and nice and clean data rather than like us trying to manipulate data in the background.
Yeah, yeah,
If that
yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. And it's kind of one of these things where we you can see why people want to document so much stuff because they're worried, I suppose, about if something goes wrong, we've got to be able to prove this, and we've got to be able to prove that, and we've got to be able to prove the other thing. Um, but it's like, A, is that really helpful? B, if we actually just did it better and therefore something didn't go wrong, we wouldn't need to prove it anyway. And C, what's that
Yep.
doing to the sort of, as you say, the engagement, the efficiency, etc. of our organizations? It's massively kind of hampering us at a time where certainly in the UK, productivity is a real challenge for organizations.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We've done time and motion studies and things like that for people sitting down there and actually writing these things out. And look, every organization does their risk management in slightly different ways. Mining here in Australia, they might sit down for 45 minutes and write out a risk assessment for people getting paid a fortune. Five people sitting around a table, some people having coffees and on Instagram and calling people whilst probably the most junior person's writing it out. Um, and it's a huge waste of time.
Mm.
Um, and we found that the time and motion studies almost look fake. It makes such a huge difference to people. Not to mention they're actually out looking at their work when they're doing it and pointing at stuff, rather than that user experience of sitting in an office or in a car actually writing it out. So,
Mm. Mm.
um, yeah, that's made an enormous difference as well. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, like anywhere where you can think that paperwork wouldn't work as well as a conversation, that's kind of where we sit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm an example of this. A lot of communication I do with my team is on little voice notes, and even writing my book. Right, a lot of
Yeah.
my book, I actually dictated it. I went for a walk or I was driving, and I just had my phone recording, and I was, just talking about stuff, and that saved me huge amounts of time versus if I'd sat down and had to not maybe not write it by hand, but type it all out and stuff. So I think, yeah, from a productivity
Absolutely.
perspective, if we can get people just talking and capturing that, accurately, and then getting those insights from that, I can see
Yeah.
that's a massive, massive benefit.
Yeah, and people quite like talking. They actually quite like talking about the work that they're doing and how they're
Yeah.
going to be doing it and passing on that knowledge and information. Um, One thing we did find out though, yeah, very early on, we used to do like video risk assessments,
Yeah.
um, where people would be videoed having the conversation, and they hated it.
Right.
The user experience wasn't quite there. People used to move out of the way of the camera, and look with things like TikTok and stuff coming back in a bit more, and more Instagram videos. Potentially, it might come back, but I wouldn't say for another 5 years that we'll be doing video kind of
Yeah.
risk assessments. Yeah, not
Mm.
that I can see yet, anyway.
No. I think, yeah, there's something like for me, doing a webinar or doing a chat like this, I feel totally comfortable. If you left and I was left on my own speaking to the camera here, something clicks in my brain, and all of a sudden I go all like wooden, and I find it hard to articulate myself well. And I've got better at that because I've practiced it so much. But I can definitely see how people would sort of shy away from doing video. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Look, and I think it affects different cultures in different ways as well. Um, we know that quite a few cultures here in Australia and New Zealand actually they weren't comfortable with being with videoed. I'd probably say through Southeast Asia as well, quite a few of the cultures there weren't comfortable with it either. So
yeah,
um, I guess it depends on where you go in the world to how comfortable someone is in front of a camera.
yeah, yeah. Definitely makes sense. So you mentioned there video, maybe for you guys in a few years. Where else do you see this going? What's your kind of big vision for where you can take Risk Talk?
Yeah, so we've got a fairly enormous roadmap, and AI is moving so fast. So it will become more and more AI driven. What we can do is tell how well your safe systems of work are actually working, how well it's understood. Um, we're already kind of there with a lot of that stuff. Even like if you wanted to attach your risk assessment to it, it can look through that, and then your workers on the ground go, "Oh, we've got to talk to this manner," and then it'll tell you anything that you might have missed or that you potentially should have considered. So you can use that and the large language model from our side to analyze things. But I guess the thing that will always be the same for the workers on the ground is that what we do for the workers, it's always built for them. So
Yeah.
we're building out more and more modules around ways people can work more efficiently, can work better. We've got a debrief module that'll be coming out soon. So not just before your work, when you have the conversation, after work, when you go, well, what actually worked well, what didn't work well, how can we improve on it next time? And then that could even be passed on to a crew that's coming on. So if you've got a shift handover, that's very powerful. So we've already tested that out a fair bit, and it's starting to work quite nicely.
Hmm.
Um, we don't do too much, and you get a lot of safety software out, like your big safety software where you input all your incidents in, your hazards, and that kind of stuff. Um, we play around a little bit with that, but not to that extent. We're still
Yeah.
for the worker on the ground, so it might be incident statements which then integrate with that other software. Or
Yeah.
if someone on the ground wants to report a hazard, they can do it quickly by talking about it, and then it can go into that software. But
Yeah.
we don't want to play in that space. That's not our game. We just want to be the best tool for the worker on the ground. Um, where other things that will probably change very soon are like wearables as well. um, so if you wanted to, you could just have something on your collar or on your watch. So that has a big impact. And one thing that we've had for a little while now, which has probably been fairly underutilized, is things around psychosocial hazards.
Right.
So when people talk, we can pick up voice biomarkers, about 6,000 of them. And what happens is we can start determining whether people are things like valence level, arousal levels, dominance levels, whether people happy, angry, sad, and we can start tracking these things to see where that kind of workforce or that work group is sitting, and are they trending in any certain directions. So
Mm-hmm.
if their arousal levels and valence levels are going way down, then we might have created some psychosocial hazards in the workplace, and we should probably do something about it, because we don't want people leaving the business.
Yeah.
Because we know attrition rates affect things and affect from a safety perspective, but also just a cost perspective, or even something worse where someone might self-harm or anything like that. We want to be on top of that before
Yeah.
anything happens. So I think that'll be the next phase. However, also comes with a bit of caution, because once you've got this data, you need to know what to do with it. There's there is a bit of a concern where it's like, oh, we've got all this great data, like, and this person said and this conversation came out really angry. What do we do about it now? Do we take them off the tools, um, or the arousal levels way down on this one? It looks as though they're quite fatigued. Should we give them a break for a few hours and let them go have a rest? What do you do with it?
Mm.
Especially if you're under time pressures, which everyone is really. So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a huge range of things we can do with the data, especially if it's good data. But I think these things are going to be moving really, really quickly. So, yeah, but the only thing I would say is that we're never going to change from being a tool for the worker on the ground. That's
Yeah.
what our primary thing is. We always want to be that best
Yeah.
user experience for the workers, and then that's when we get the best information and best data to make informed decisions.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. So really enjoyed that today, Stuart. Thank you so much, and learned a lot, and it's got me thinking about different things as well, which is the plan always when we do an episode like this is to try and get people thinking and opening their minds to new possibilities. If someone in the audience wants to kind of take that first step to go from, that kind of tick blocks compliance first space into, having some conversations and really changing the way that they're delivering on risk management, what's the best first step they could take? And then where can people find out more about you and the business? And is there anything else you want to plug before we wrap up?
Yeah, I guess if they wanted to find us, you can always contact us at info@risktalk.com.au. Or you can just go to our website at risktalk.com.au and you'll see it. You'll be able to contact us. We like being really involved in everything that we do as well. We've got people in the UK, people in the US as well. But that'll be probably the first step, and we're more than happy to have a conversation at any stage. I mean, our technology is built on conversation, so it
Yeah,
would be a bit amiss of us if we weren't keen to have a chat. So yeah, have a look out there, see what's out there as well. I mean, as I say, we're just a tool. We believe we're the best at what we do, but there's a whole range of technology out there which can be great for you. I know there's a whole bunch of software out there. Some's come out of Ireland with warehouse imaging from your cameras and providing data and feedback on there. Yeah, we see a whole bunch of good tech out there. So just be a bit curious about what's out there at the moment. But yeah, feel free to contact me. As I say, I would love to have a chat and see how it could potentially fit for your business. Keep in mind, it works really well for a lot of scenarios, but like I don't want my pilot when I go on a plane using RiskTalk to go, yeah, I think I'll go this way today. So it doesn't work for every scenario.
yeah,
It doesn't. If you need a checklist, you need a checklist. But most of the times in your dynamic work environments, that's when it works the best. But look, feel free to reach out. It'll be great to chat with anyone. Oh, and another thing, we will also be in Prague at the end of November for the HSE Global Series. It'll be good to see a whole bunch of people there.
good stuff. Thanks, Stuart. Really enjoyed it. Learned a lot and appreciate your time. So thank you for that. And thanks to you for joining Stuart and I today. And we will see you next week on the next episode of the podcast. Cheers.
Thanks for joining us on the Safety and Risk Success podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit follow and do share on social media. Does anyone you know spring to mind as a great guest, even yourself? If so, please contact us on podcast@slipsafety.co.uk. See you next week for another episode.